The outspoken constitutional city lawyer, senior counsel Ahmed Nasir, is saying something about Raila Odinga. Yesterday, Raila met his longtime friends, Joe, the former governor of Mombasa, and another ally, Junet Mohammed. And that meeting was discussed politically in the country. Because we're in a season of meetings, William Ruto meeting his people and meeting rebels. Ahmed Nasir is one person who rarely, you will find him seldom say something nice about Raila Odinga. But I was shocked that Nasir had the following sentiments concerning Raila Odinga and especially that meeting. The lawyer posted Raila Odinga in between Joho and Junet Mohammed looking healthy and energetic, and he was saying, Honorable Raila has so much energy and trusted lieutenants. Don't rule him out of anything. As I said, it is very rare to find Grand Mullah saying anything good about Raila Odinga. And I'm sure if you ask him, he will tell you that when he says don't rule him out of anything, he means 2027. Why do I think so? Raila Odinga is a politician. And so when you want to look at his energy vis-a-vis what that energy can do, it only means you are gauging his energy with the politics, the prevailing politics within the country. And I want to agree with him that Raila still has much energy. My only worry is how this energy is going to be used. Because just a few hours before this video, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority increased prices of fuel more than it has ever been witnessed in the history of Kenya. In fact, as I speak now, there is something that is trending. Kenya shillings 33.13 to 202. I mean, that increment is more than 100%, I don't know. And Raila has an opportunity to make hay when the sun shines. Already there are people calling upon Raila to go back to the streets. Maandamano is actually trending here at number 1. And they want Raila to go back to the streets. I'm opposed to any idea of going back to the streets because of two things. The other time before we went for the second series of the demonstrations, there were voices from Rift Valley and Central saying, Baba, let's go to the streets. But when people went to the streets, they're the same people who turned against the demonstrators. Some were given pangas and machetes because they didn't understand the real meaning of the demonstrations. Let us do away with the demonstrations because people must feel the pain so that when the time comes, they will go to the street themselves. But how is Raila going to use his energy? If you ask me, Raila has the final opportunity to take Kenya to the next level. He can decide to run for the presidency, but that depends on a number of things. 2027 is still very far. That will depend on how they agree together with the other lieutenants like Eugene Wamalwa, Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Oparanya, and all the other Azimio brigade. Like Ahmed Nasir says there, Raila has loyal lieutenants. If you ask me what Raila must do with this energy, number 1 on my list, Raila must with immediate effect walk away from the Bombshell talks, because this is something that is meant to waste his time as William Ruto engages vigorously in preparation for 2027. William Ruto is meeting delegates. William Ruto is busy buying everybody left, right, and center, and is even taking Azimio rebels. And as he does this, he wants to manage Raila. And so the Azimio, led by Raila, must walk away from these talks. Number two, they should not go back to the streets even after walking out of that dialogue. Then they must focus on recruitment of party members. I like the idea that Raila Odinga made some changes by giving people like Simba Rati slots and is trying to build his politics around some young men and women there. So recruitment of party officials must also take center stage in Azimio. And when they do this, we must also be told who the Azimio flag bearer is as early as possible, so that as people walk towards 2027, people walk knowing very well who they want to vote for. Giving us a presidential candidate early enough will help with the teething problems, so that if there are people who want to walk away, they do it early enough to allow realignment, than waiting towards the end, where if you decide that it is Kalonzo Musyoka and there are people who are disgruntled about Kalonzo, they walk away at the very tail end, disorganizing Azimio. They should announce it as early as they can. It must also happen because already in Kenya Kwanza we know who the flag bearer is. And they are already bragging about it. They are only waiting to see the push and pulls from the Azimio. So this must be done. Raila must sit down and take, what we call a postmortem, a fresh postmortem of what happened in 2022. Maybe extend it to 2017. Because there have been, a lot of debate on how the elections were managed. Because I understand that as we speak, there are agents that were never paid. I also understand that, in fact, I've got evidence that in Central, some of the purported agents of Azimio were either intimidated or compromised. And in some stations, there were no agents completely. So such things must be dealt with early enough. The reason I'm saying this, Raila has an opportunity because William Samoei Ruto has failed on his promises. Even those who voted for him understand that he is a failed president. And Raila must take advantage of this. One thing that has been ailing political parties, not only in ODM, but the whole of Azimio, is the party nominations. Let me say this without fear of contradiction. Party nominations must be dealt with early enough so that Raila cleans his house. Because there are people who mismanage party nominations and it is blamed on Raila Odinga. Sometimes Raila does not even go to the lowest, cadre of the MCA. There are people in ODM and in Azimio who think that they are the gods of this party, so that they distribute, tickets to people they want, their girlfriends and their relatives, because we must speak this. Raila must look at this so that we have clean nominations. Of course, things that must be looked at are party loyalty. Very, very important. And on this, I agree with him. So these are things that must be looked at in totality. And once they issue certificates to the right people, then they must now embark on proper campaigns. Because I still believe that the Azimio supporters are intact. William Ruto can take a few leaders here and there, but those leaders will go alone. If Azimio, confirms to them and proves that they are there to stay and to stand with the people. The other thing where Raila must focus his energy is cleansing of the IEBC as we focus in 2027. The part that is led by the CEO, Marjan, those people must go home because their hands are soiled. I can assure Raila Amolo Odinga that even if you get clean commissioners, fresh, as he's proposing to have IPPG, the Inter-Parties Parliamentary Group, once Marjan and his people are still there, this is going to complicate matters because all they need is to just have some wrangles there and it is gone. So the IEBC must also be looked at because that is where the mess is. As they do this, in 2017, David Emeritus Maraga, one of the men I believe have got the heart of a lion, the only judge that has ever looked at a sitting president with all the sword and intimidation and tells him that this election was wrong. He ruled that election is a process. It starts with procurement. These are things that Raila must look at because Chebukati intentionally did this. In fact, in both 2013 and 2017, they interfered with the elections from the procurement and the company. Raila must look at the company that is given the contract. If we still have this company that is messing up and telling us that he cannot open the server, it is all useless. Once the IEBC is sorted out, then we need to look at the introduction of the digital ID. This is where the problem begins because I have seen people complaining. When the government decides that they want to introduce new IDs, they can do it intentionally in such a way that members who are coming from the Azimio strongholds will have their IDs delayed. This is something that William Ruto can do because he's very cunning and crafty. And so when all this is happening, let them agree that if by 2027 there shall be, some kind of hiccups where someone has applied for an ID and this digital, is not processed in time, then they will be allowed to vote. The last giant in the house where less energy must be focused is the Supreme Court. If there is one thing that will cause Raila or the Azimio, if there is one giant that will cause that person presidency, is the Supreme Court. Because this court is also chest thumping. If you see the way they do their ruling, then you realize that there is a problem. They are also soiled. They have worked together with William Ruto from the BBI to Sakaja ruling to now the presidential ruling with hot air and wild goose chase. That is also another place that must be looked at if Raila has to reorganize his house. My biggest problem is how we as Kenyans are going to manage the international community. Because Raila Amolo Odinga is on their black book. They have decided he will never set his foot in State House as a president. Raila himself has said it before. Winnie Odinga has said it before. I have seen people like Rigathi Gachagua chest thumping about it, that the international community knows you. And if you see what is happening with the increased prices, the increased taxes, removal of subsidies, the LGBTQ, all these things, as we speak today, Meg Whitman accompanied William Ruto to the USA. They have forged a formidable force. Then Kenyans must decide that during elections, there is no any ambassador who will set foot in Bomas, because this is something that we can manage ourselves. And so I agree that Raila has much energy, but it must be channeled to the right direction.